Hi, okay, so this is the zeptocore tutorial. Let's first talk about the machine itself. It has a top right switch here for turning it on, top left switch for turning on the speaker, the top right audio output, which can also be configured to be audio and sync output, and then the top left is a clock input. This MIDI USB-C can be used to upload firmware and also for USB MIDI in and out. An SD card reader for samples on the SD card, 3 knobs, which are knob X, Y, and Z, and then 4 select buttons, which are buttons A, B, C, and D, and then 16 other buttons. The way that the select buttons work is that you often hold one of them, and then turn a knob or press a key to activate or change some parameter. There's 2 batteries on the back, but you can also power through the USB-C. So let's go ahead and turn it on. It will start up immediately and start playing. We can stop playing by holding B and press D. That will stop and go back to 1. And then you can start the sample again anytime by holding B and pressing D again. If you just want to mute, you can hold B and press C. And now it's still playing, but it's muted. Let's go over some of the basic controls. So let's start it, unmute it. If you hold A and turn knob Z, you can change volume. If you hold A and turn knob X, you change tempo. When you change tempo, it will briefly show what the tempo is. So I'm now at 150. If you hold A and turn knob Y, you change pitch. This is independent of the tempo, so you can get some interesting delayed effects if the pitch is offset from the tempo and you're not matched. By default, it will match to the tempo. You can also change tempo by holding A and tapping the B key. So you can tap in a tempo that you want. That's very fast. And then it again will show the tempo that it's set at once you do that. That's just holding the A key. There's a bunch of other settings for the holding B, C, and D and changing the knobs, but we'll talk about those later. Okay, so let's talk about the 3 different modes. There are 3 different modes. I'm going to mute it for now. We're in the first mode because you can see a light on this button, button B. You can change modes by holding A and pressing B, C, or D. Oh, when it's muted, it doesn't show easily. So we're in A, B, we're in mode, the jump mode, we're in the effect mode, and we're in the bass mode. So moving around the modes is as simple as pressing those buttons. The jump mode is the first mode, the default. In the jump mode, these buttons allow you to jump around the sample. So pressing on them will jump around the sample. If you press 2 buttons at the same time, it will retrigger, where retriggering fast if you press up here and slower if you press down here. And sometimes it does these filter ramps or pitch ramps. To stop a retrigger, you can just press any button without holding. If you hold down 2 and then press a 3rd button, it will loop between the first and the second holds. So you can loop small sections of the audio pretty easily by holding down multiple buttons. The idea here is just to interact with the music in a way that you're reacting to it, and pressing the buttons in time, for me, is kind of the most fun. Okay, so in the jump mode, you can access the effects. You can also access the effects from the effect mode, the mash mode, but I'll show you how to do it here first. So in the jump mode, you hold A and you press any of these buttons. So if I press that, I activate distortion. And then if I let go of the A, I'm still in the sample, jumping around. And to toggle it off, I can hold A and press it again. Alternatively, I can hold this key and then go into the mash mode by pressing C. And in here, I can just toggle it by pressing. And conversely, if I hold the A key, I can go jump around the sample like I'm in jump mode. So we'll talk about effects later. The last mode I want to talk about is the bass mode. So if you hold A and press D, you're in bass mode, and now each key is a bass note. So you can play bass along with your drums or whatever. Okay, let's talk about changing samples. If you hold the B key, you can access the banks. So you can see what's lit are the banks that have samples. So if we go to bank 3, now we can choose a sample while still holding this B key. So I'll choose sample 6. So now we have loaded in bank 3, sample 6. You can also change banks more quickly by holding the C key and turning knob X. And now I'm in bank 2, now I'm bank 1. And this will change banks, knob Y will change samples. So within this bank, I'm moving through the samples by turning this knob. So each bank can have up to 16 samples, and you can use up to 16 banks. And there's no limit to how long a sample can be, because it's on the SD card and streaming directly from there. Alright, let's talk about these fun, I call chaos parameters. If you hold D and turn X, Y, or Z, it will turn up randomness. So if we turn X, it turns up the randomness for randomly jumping in the sample. So you can see it's kind of mixing up how it's playing the sample by jumping around. If you turn up knob Y, holding D and turn up Y, it'll add in random retriggering. And if you hold D and turn up Z, it will do random tunneling. Tunneling is where it will, instead of playing the current sample, it'll grab a section of another sample in the same bank and play that instead. So you can quickly become pretty chaotic. And so if you hold D and turn these all down, you go back to a normal play mode. Speaking of play modes, there's several different kinds of play modes. This right now is what I call continuous play mode, where it's just playing through the sample. You can also create one-shot play modes where, so if I go to bank 5 here, these are all one-shots. So if I just play them, they play a sample and then stop. So you can use that by loading in drum beats, and then you can sequence and create drum beats just doing that. You can switch between the two modes. So if we go back to one of these continuous modes and you press the combination 5, 6, 5, it'll toggle between one shot and normal. So now one shot is on. So now I can access each slice and it will play once. And I can toggle it off by pressing 5, 6, 5 again. And now one shot mode is off. In one shot mode is off, I call it continuous mode. And there's also two versions of continuous mode. So right now, when I jump, it will jump to that slice, but then continue from where it should have been as it goes through the sample. That's what I call sample lock or sequence lock. And you can toggle that by pressing 1, 2, 3, 4. And it'll say lock off. So now when I jump in the sample, it will go back to where I jump and start over again. Or start from where I jump, that's a better way of saying it. So if you don't want things to be in time or more connected to maybe external gear, you can turn the lock off, and then you can have kind of a lot of fun jumping around yourself. And then toggle it back on, you press 1, 2, 3, 4, and lock goes back on. So now no matter what you press, it'll go back to the time where it was in. And then finally, for this continuous mode, there's something called tempo matching. So when I change the tempo, it speeds it up to stay matched with the tempo. But you can turn this off, which is very useful for like one shots. You just press the combo 5, 6, 7, 8. Oops, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now it's going to be the normal tempo that it's set at, no matter what tempo you are pushing it to. But it will change the way it plays. Because now we're going so slow that we're kind of doubling up on each slice. And here we're going so fast that we're only getting the first part of it. Okay, let's talk about sequencing. So you can sequence in jump mode, the effect mode, or bass mode. And sequencing is the same in each case. Let's start with the jump mode and let's use a one-shot drum set because it's easiest to start with. So we'll hold B to select a bank. I'll go this bank, which is the one-shot bank on the default samples, and we'll just use the first drum set. So this drum set, we can make a simple beat by sequencing it. So all you do is hold C and then press an empty slot. So let's use slot 4 here to record into, and then hold C, press D to initiate recording. And it won't start recording until you type something in. When you type something in, you want to make sure to keep the timing right because it doesn't enforce 4/4 or any other timing. And you also need to include an extra note at the end because it counts the time between notes. And the last note you want in your sequence will have the timing according to the next note that you press. And that last note, the very last of the sequence, won't be in the sequence. So let's do a simple beat here to show. Okay, and then you hold C and then press B, and now it will toggle that beat. Now you see I added one too many, so it's kind of off. It's kind of interesting, but let's record another sequence. So hold C and then select an empty slot, and then hold C and press D to start recording. Okay, so that was a very simple sequence, and then hold C and B. And if you want to quantize it more than it is, you hold C and then turn knob Z. And then it will match it to the closest quantization on the tempo. So whether that, here it's quarter notes, but as you drag it more to the left, it'll be more 32nd note, 16 note. It doesn't enforce 4/4, so if it might add extra or a little less, which is one of the aspects I actually like about it. Here we can actually do something fun and combine or chain together those two sequences. So to do that, hold C, again press an empty slot, and now press the sequences that you want to chain. So if we want maybe one of the first one and then two of the second one, we press this and then two of those and then let go of C. Now we have a new sequence here, which is a chain of these two. And you can continually chain sequences until they get longer and longer. Okay, let's talk about effects. Effects are fun. So let's go to continuous mode. Let's load in a sample. So I'll hold B and then press bank 1, sample 2. And now we're playing a sample. Speed it up a little bit. Okay, so let's go through the effects. So hold A and go to C. So now we're in effect mode. First 4 effects are what I call transfer functions. So they kind of change the sound a bit. The first one's a saturation. And for each of these effects, the X and Y knobs can change some of the parameters. So for saturation, if we hold it and then turn the X knob, you can change the amount of saturation that you get. The next is a loss. It's sort of to emulate like a bad radio or something. Next is distortion. So like this one, the X is a preamp and the post amp. And you can combine these. So if we combine the saturation with the loss or saturation with distortion, it gets very crunchy very fast. This is going to be a bit crusher, which you can change sample rate and the bit depth. Okay, and then this line we have more time-based effects. This is a time stretch. So it's like 8 times stretched. This is the delay. Delay has some fun parameters for like feedback. Oh, it didn't work there because I have to actually toggle it on and hold it, and then turn up the parameter. And then this is the duration of the delay. And then to toggle it off, you just press it again. This is a comb, a stereo comb. This is a beat repeat. This is a, okay, so that's row 2. Row 3 is going to be more slightly like spatial effects. So the first one's like a gating effect. It's pretty subtle by default, but you can turn it to really gate. And this is the opposite. This is a reverb, so it kind of expands things. And then we have an autopan that autopans with the beat. A scratch. A scratch. And then on this row we have more pitch shifting things. So the first one filters out pitches, so it's just a filter. You can also filter by holding B and turning the Y knob. This is going to be a pitch lower, or you can speed up pitch too depending on how it's set. And then this one is a reverse. And finally we have a tape stop, which will actually mute the audio once it stops, but you can turn it back on. And these effects can be combined. So like my favorites are to like do a beat repeat and then do a tape stop on that and then turn those off. And then definitely distortion, toggling comb, or the time stretch with the comb. And they're made to kind of punch in and punch out. All of the effects can be probabilistic as well. So if you press an effect and then turn the Z knob, it will actually turn how often it turns on randomly. So the further the Z knob is to the right when you hold it down, the more often it's going to happen randomly. So you can actually get a lot of randomness by going through these effects and then turning up the Z knob, and then they will turn on and off randomly. And to stop it, you have to go through them and then just turn them down. Maybe in the future there will be a macro parameter for that. And yeah, you can also sequence these effects. So if you hold C and press D, just like before, you can type it in and then create sequences of the effects. And then stop the sequence by holding C and pressing B like before. Saving and loading is also pretty simple. So if you have something that you like at a certain BPM with a certain sample loaded, you can always save it by holding D, selecting any of the 16 slots. So let's say the first slot, and then pressing C. And now when you restart the device, it will load that first slot. And you can always load it by holding D and pressing C again. So if we change this up, we can load the previous state by holding D and pressing B. Okay, to activate syncing, so if you want to change the output here to a sync in audio, you just use this combo where you go up here and then up here, and it will create a sync out. And you can disable it by doing the same thing again. So that's useful for syncing external gear. Okay, and then for loading your own samples, you want to turn the device off and then take out the SD card and plug the SD card into your computer and then go to your computer. Let's talk about loading samples onto the zeptocore. If you go to the zeptocore website, there's links to the tool that you can use online to upload samples or create samples. So if you scroll down, there's a sample tool button. If you're at the very top, you can click this little wrench here and it will take you to the tool. If you want to click here, uploading samples, it'll explain everything I'm going to say, but it also gives you links so you can download the tool to use everything that I'm about to show offline. And that's a little faster, so you don't have to download the sample pack from the server to load on your SD card. For now, let's just use the one online. We'll just click this link and we can just use one of these random URLs, Grand Scrambler. And you click on that and now you have this unique URL, which will be yours, and you can load all your samples here and they'll forever be here at this URL. So first thing you do, or first thing you see is these little boxes. These are the different banks. There's 16 banks, and each one you can put up to 16 samples. So let's work in bank 1 for now. Let's drag and drop some audio. Well, I'll click this, a window pops up, and I'm going to drop in this sample file. This sample file it's 8 beats. I already wrote it and I put the BPM 172. If you click on this now, it will show you the sample, and I've named it with this beats 8 BPM 172. And since I put BPM 172 in the name, it will automatically give you a BPM source of 172. It will also guess it if it's not there, but you can always change it here if you want to change it. The source BPM is really useful if you're doing tempo matching because it will automatically speed up or speed down with the tempo and keep your whole sample matched to the current tempo, so it plays in time. We can play the sample if you just hit this button. You can also click on individual pieces. These are the pieces that will be assigned to each key. So in this case, we have 16 slices. So there's 16 buttons and each slice will be one key. If you have more than 16 slices, then it will continue through the sample and then the keys will be whatever are closest to the current slices. So if you have 32 slices, once you get to the second half of the sample, all the keys will be related to the second 16 slices. You can see there's a couple options here. We can change it from stereo to mono. Mono will use a little less CPU. So if you want to be kind to your CPU, you can do mono, but stereo works just fine. If you have one shots, you'll want to turn this on. I'll talk about that more later, but this is a continuous sample, so I don't want one shot. And tempo matching I want on. You usually don't want tempo matching for one shots, but in this case, I want this sample to play in tempo. You can do all sorts of modifying here of your slices. So if we say like this slice, I want the transients to be a little bit closer, we can go here and move this around so that this slice will be containing the whole transient. And you can adjust as you want. It's not the greatest tool for adjusting samples, but it works mostly in a pinch to adjust how you like. And you can also re-splice. So this is the default splicing is going to be even splices of 16th notes. So here at a BPM of 172 for 8 beats, it's going to give me 16 slices. You can also create any arbitrary number of slices. So let's do 24 and we can create them evenly. So now we have 24 slices. We could do 32 slices. And now the first 16 will be assigned to the 16 buttons, and then we're on the second half. These will be the second 16. They're much shorter slices now. And you can also click this button on the server, which will create from transients. So now it will create 32 slices as best it can at different transient points. And you can see these are very uneven sizes. It will still play in time. Each slice will be given the appropriate time. But it can make things really fun if you do this, and then each key can kind of be a different transient. Yeah, so we can just do even for now. And yeah, that's great. So we'll have that. And let's load in some more. So if you have renoise samples, so these .xrni, you can actually load those in and they will be sliced according to the reason slicing. So this one contains the reason slicing, the reason source BPM. Play the sample. It automatically detects those facets. You can also load in the op1 sample drums. So I'll load one of those in called lo-fi. This is from op1.fun, and it is a drum sample. This is actually going to be a one-shot sample. If we play this, you can hear it's all one-shots. It's spliced. It automatically figures out the splicing from the patch. But here, since it is a one-shot, we should turn one-shot on so that on the zeptocore, it knows that it will stop after playing each splice. And we might want to turn tempo matching off so that no matter what tempo you are, it will play with this pitch. And one-shot mode has a couple of different options. You can stop at the end of the splice, loop back, stop at the end of the sample, loop back at the end of the sample. But the canonical is to stop at the end of the splice. And again, here, if you want to, you can change all sorts of things about where the splices are and fit them to how you like. And yeah, that is good for those. Okay, one cool thing that we can do is build our own one-shot sample packs. Let's do this in Bank 2. So we'll go ahead and go click Bank 2. And in Bank 2, I'm going to load in a couple of different one-shots. Let's load in some kicks, 4 kicks. Let's load in some snare drums, 4 snare drums. And let's load in some hi-hats, 4 hi-hats. I'm going to fill this up for 16, so I'm going to add 4 more things. I'll just do 4 shakers here. 2, 3, 4. Okay, so now I've got 4 of these 16 things. So the kick is just one kick, right? And then all of these are just one sound, just one slice. If there are multiple slices, it will also work. So you could load something that has a kick and a snare and it's 2 slices. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit select none, select all, and then merge selected files. And then now what happens is you get a new file, and I can delete all of these, remove the selected. And now this file is going to be all of those samples now loaded into the 16 slices. So there's the 4 kicks, 4 snares, 4 hats, and then some of these shakers. So this is now a one-shot pack, and we want to say one shot here, and I'm going to turn tempo matching off. So now we have this nice sample pack where we load into the zeptocore, and each key will be each of these samples. And this is stereo, that's fine. So this is going to be on bank 2. So once you're all set with your banks and your samples and you've edited them, the next thing to do is to hit download zip to load onto SD card. So click this and it will process and it will download a file. Oh, and you don't see it because I'm not sharing that part of the screen, but there is now a downloaded file in your downloads. And hold on. Okay, now my whole screen is shared. So we've downloaded this sample pack. And if we open it up here, unzip it, it's called Grand Scrambler after the name of my URL. And if we open that, we have now the bank 0 with our files and bank 1 with our files. And all we have to do is copy those, and we can go to the SD card, the zeptocore SD card, and we should remove the old banks. So we're replacing bank 0 and bank 1, and we're replacing them with the new bank 0 and the new bank 1. So we have those, and once we're done there, we can just right click and eject the SD card. And now you can plug this SD card back into the computer and play with those samples. All right, let's go ahead and see how those samples turned out. Load the SD card, turn it on. And bank 1 is going to be those 3 samples, and then bank 2, we go bank 2, this is going to be that one-shot sample. And you can see, indeed, we've got our one-shots nicely loaded in there. Cool. Yeah, that's it.